My name is Mike Smeed. I'm the Managing Director of InMotion Ventures. InMotion Ventures is the wholly owned venture capital arm of Jaguar Land Rover based in the UK. So my previous role to this one, I was the CFO of the joint venture between JLR and Chery Automobile in Shanghai. Had 2 years there, and previous to that was in a marketing finance role within JLR. So I've been with JLR for 5 years now. The main difference I would say between the two is coming from a corporate world into investing is the principle of the power law. So when you're investing corporately in things like mergers and acquisitions or things like that, you tend to be looking for very reasonable levels of growth and very secure levels of growth and return. However, in investing and in corporate and venture capital, what you're looking for are through the power law, those areas of returns where 10% of your investments will return 90% of your other investments. So very much you're looking for those outliers rather than that more safe and secure level of investment return. When we first set up InMotion Ventures back in 2016, it was very much set up at arm's length from JLR and was focused, as many kind of strategic funds are, at looking at adjacencies, new business models, trying to learn from threats that could exist in outside of your core industry. But in 2022, we undertook a reset of the fund and a change in focus. JLR announced its Reimagine strategy, which was about creating an all-electric future for JLR, but alongside the product lens of JLR, Reimagine for us as a business contains a lot more elements to it. So it's really looking at all elements of our business, not just in the vehicles that we produce. So in 2022, given that strategic focus, given where JLR now is as a company, really we've been given the remit to come a lot more closer to JLR. That's one of the reasons why an insider was brought in to lead the fund. There are 7 areas of innovative focus for the company, and we've identified of those 7, 4 principal areas for us for investment. So our investment thesis contains those 4 areas. Let me talk about the 3 that we're not actively investing, because again, it's important that within the open innovation strategy within JLR, there are still many routes into the company. We have within JLR a suite of approaches to innovation, so not just the CVC. So those 3 areas are really focusing on talent, looking at talent retention, talent attraction, particularly at the new generation of employees that are coming through, and taking a much more human-centric approach to our recruitment and retention. We also have the metaverse, which again is a massive area, whether you call it Web3, the metaverse, where that's going to disrupt the way that people reveal vehicles in the future, the way that people look at how we launch those vehicles, how people purchase a vehicle, and how they approach those things. And also digital services, so looking at ways in which we can provide value-added services to consumers based on the step change in technology that's now available in the vehicle. So those are the 3 areas that JLR are very interested from an innovative perspective, but we're seeing less opportunities for investment. So the 4 areas that we're really interested in, the first one, and probably the most obvious, is electrification. So as an automotive focused fund, that hopefully isn't a shock for everyone. And the 2 approaches that we have to that are both the consumer side, so the experience of charging, so that end-to-end charging experience, whether that be at home, at work, or when you go out shopping or whatever that may be. But also in terms of the battery technology, particularly battery monitoring systems in the vehicle. So there's a product lens and a consumer lens to electrification. Very similar in sustainability. So JLR have made some very public commitments in terms of being tailpipe zero from 2039. and really therefore again split between a consumer focus and a product focus. So on the product side, very much focusing on sustainable materials, so looking at low carbon and negative carbon materials, because of the scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions targets that we have, making sure that, you know, obviously the vehicles that we build will need to contain negative materials, otherwise 1 + 2 + 3 won't equal 0. So that's a big thing for us. But also looking on the industrial side as well, so areas in which our operations can decarbonize, and whether that's looking at things like biodiversity, whether that's looking at things like direct air capture and things like that, are areas that we are considering again for a lot of change and innovation is happening in those areas. So that's electrification and sustainability, I suppose, would be the two kind of most obvious ones. We then move into connected vehicle. So we have new platforms available in our vehicles, and as alongside, I think electrification is getting a lot of kind of noise around technical advances, but really what we're seeing is there are huge seismic changes in the technological capability of our vehicles, and that's both being connected to either the cloud or the edge or to satellite technologies and things like that. So we're spending a lot of time, because obviously if you buy a Defender in particular, you want to be in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And therefore you've got to make sure that if you are in the middle of nowhere, then you can still receive, you know, communication on your satellite devices, on your satellite navigation, as well as your own personal devices. So making sure that we're connected always to always to the mothership, but also making sure that through initiatives such as software over the air, features over the air, that we're able to update your vehicle when it's parked outside your house overnight. So a little bit like your iPhone updates, and making sure that we can continuously provide the most up-to-date services and technologies to the consumers, and therefore making sure that that vehicle is always connected back into JLR in some way, and taking the thousands of data points that we're going to have. Long is gone the time when you have a fuel gauge, a temperature gauge, and if you're lucky, a tire gauge monitoring in your vehicle. We now have access to thousands of different data points that's going on in that vehicle, and how we do that. And then the final one, which is a little bit less car line centric, but as a manufacturer and as an enterprise, looking at Industry 5.0, looking at enterprise technology. So how do things like AI, additive manufacturing, internet-enabled manufacturing in our facilities really enable us to make sure that we're producing those amazing products at the most optimal and best rates that we possibly can. So those are the 4 areas. We're seeing a lot of activity going on in those areas, and what that's opening us up to, particularly in areas like climate tech, and into sustainability, and into the into Industry 5.0, then that's opening us up to many more fellow investors and startups outside of typical automotive spaces. So that's been a big learning for us and a development for us over the past 12 months. Yeah, so I, as the leader of the fund, have been incredibly lucky that we've inherited a portfolio from my predecessor, which is largely aligned to the future direction. So again, there are not many surprises, kind of in there. I suppose the most obvious one for us would be our investment in Ascend Elements. They are a battery recycler based in the US. They have just completed their Series D fundraising round that's valued them at $1 billion. So that's our first unicorn as an investment team, which again we're kind of excited about. But as we move into our new investments, sustainable materials has been a big area for us, as I mentioned. We have made a couple of investments in that area. The first in a company called Gen Phoenix. They formerly known as eLeather, based in Peterborough in the UK, and they have developed a technology to recycle leather. So they've identified that there's a lot of wastage in the production of leather products, and what they have done is to be able to use the offcuts from that manufacturing process and to grind that down and produce a new leather product based on that. Now, cows are a little bit frustrating in the sense they're not perfectly rectangular. They might strike up against, a piece of barbed wire or something like that. So there is a lot of wastage in those products. So, and we've identified, as I've mentioned, moving forward, looking to move into alternative materials, and this provides us with a great kind of halfway house as we look to develop and move away from being solely a leather animal leather products in our vehicles. At the other end of the scale, because that was the Series B investment that we made, so for us it's slightly later. Our investments typically are between seed and Series A, but we have the ability to go to pre-seed and Series B, and this gives a great example because at the other end of the scale we've invested in a pre-seed company called Uncaged Innovations based in the US, and they are a biomaterials alternative to leather company. So looking at various plant-based materials to develop a leather alternative product, which avoids some of the issues that I mentioned around kind of marking, but also allows you to be a lot more flexible in terms of color and things like that. And we're very excited about the potential of those products. This is a great time to invest because I think everyone has realized that things got a little bit out of hand in terms of certain areas. So therefore, having a really disciplined focus and investment thesis, I think, puts us in a great position. As you say, what we're seeing in the VC landscape is hard at the moment. I think it's pretty obvious that from the data that's coming through that a lot of VC funds are finding it difficult to raise new funds. There's the concerns around down rounds that are happening from those kind of heady days. So I think that's put a lot of pressure on them, and certainly again the data that we're seeing is that the number and value of VC-led deals is declining. From a CVC front, however, the opposite is the case. So we are seeing, from data from Global Corporate Venturing issued a report back in April, and really they're seeing, and alongside anecdotal feedback that that I would provide and other CVCs would provide, we're seeing an increase in the number of deals and the values of those deals that CVCs are being involved in. What we're seeing from a personal InMotion front, and I'll give you a great example of another portfolio company that I should mention, Chipflow. Chipflow was a great example of where the lead investor, a VC, came to our investment team, and really were looking to us to provide validation that the product that Rob and the team at Chipflow had developed and their idea was something that and was a problem or an opportunity that an OEM like JLR would want to exploit. And we're definitely seeing more of that. I think a lot of VCs are now, there's a bit of nervousness out there naturally, and what we can do, we have a very unfair advantage in JLR. We have access to over 9,000 engineers at the end of a call who can very quickly do a technical due diligence. We also understand the strategies that the business have and the decision makers in the business have. So very quickly we can work out whether this is a solution or, that's looking for a problem.